Aikwe, Neknamalita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian. Today I will be going over my February wrap-up. The month of February was a little weird. I knew it was going to be busy. I didn't think I was going to be that busy. So my partner and I went on vacation in Oregon. Hopefully you'll see a travel vlog about that so shortly. It's going to be a short one. We'll see how it goes. I still downloading all my clips because I filmed it on my phone. I'm not happy about that. I don't miss doing that. But I'm still just chicken shit about filming and with anyone around, including my partner. The weather has been odd here. We've gotten a couple of snow days, which is really weird for the coast in Northern California. So it's been a kerfuffle, as well as my dog getting hurt / sick. We're not quite sure what, but he's better now, but that took up a lot of mental real estate. And so I didn't film nearly as much as I had wanted to, and didn't post nearly as much as I wanted to. So my apologies on that, but hopefully the month of March. For the month of March though, I read 7 books, which is more than I expected, but I'm happy with it. And then, which equates to 1,836 pages and 41.46 hours listened to. So if you don't know, I do count, if I listen to an audiobook, I do count the amount of pages it would have taken me if I read it physically as well. However, if I read a book physically, I don't necessarily count how many hours it took me to read it, just because I don't like timing myself. I take longer reading physical books than I do listening to audiobooks. And that's just how I do it. I also have 1 DNF, but I'm not counting that in these stats because I don't consider it read. But I will talk about it briefly here shortly. Let's see. In terms of source, I have 2 audiobooks and 5 physical, which is a bit of the opposite of what I typically do. Typically it's more audiobook heavy, but not this month. Format, I have 3 graphic novels and 4 novels. Audience, 5 adult, 2 YA. Ratings, I have 0 1 stars, 0 2 stars, 1 2.5 star, 1 3 star, 1 3.5 star, 1 4 star, 1 4.5 star, and 1 5 star, giving the average rating for the month 3.75, which is exactly the same that I for the average rating of January. So that's interesting. For genres, I have 2 fantasy, 1 horror, 1 mystery, 1 nonfiction, 1 romance, and 1 sci-fi. So out of the 11 Pokemon cards that I pulled for the month of February, I completed 6 of them. Technically 7, but I didn't complete the 7th one until it was already March, so I'm not counting it for February. I'm still happy I was able to get to it. Yeah, let's go ahead and just get into the books I read. The first book that I read for the month of February was a trainer card, so a mood read, and that was Tuesday Mooney Talks to Ghosts by Kate Reculia. This was a book that I ended up getting from a friend. We did a book exchange, and I don't think she wants this one back, and I don't want to keep it either. Tuesday Mooney Talks to Ghosts. I didn't know, I don't think, what it was doing or was trying to do too much. We are following Tuesday Mooney, who is an adult. This is an adult book. I was completely taken off guard by that because it looks like a young adult or new adult at the least. But I think it's because of the silhouette of the person running in the middle. It was giving me like Serafina vibes that I was thinking, oh, young adult. Or even, I don't know why, I was just thinking young adult, and then I started reading it. I'm like, this is kind of boring for a young adult, and only to realize it was an adult. There is a romance in here of sorts. There's no sex scenes, it's fade to black, but it's still, I don't know, there was just too much going on in this book. We are following Tuesday Mooney. She ends up witnessing the death of this eccentric billionaire at a work event, and then gets wrapped up in his scavenger hunt that he ended up planning before his death. The prize of the scavenger hunt is possibly his riches, where they're not entirely sure. So she teams up with a couple people to try to solve these scavenger hunts. There's so much going on in here. So we have a gay best friend who doesn't really know Tuesday that well. He wants to know her better, but she's very guarded because of her past. Tuesday ended up losing her best friend in childhood for some unknown reasons. She ultimately went missing, and Tuesday ended up seeing her ghost, believed she was murdered, and that got her into some trouble. She has also befriended her neighbor's kid, who is 13 years old. They're friends, who recently lost her mom and wants to see her ghost because of personal reasons. Tuesday wants to protect her because of the trouble that she got into her past, but then she starts hearing her best friend's voice again. The love interest in here his family is messy, and his brother is just not a nice guy. He pretends to be his brother, only for his brother. I don't know. It was so complicated. So that had so much going on that nothing really caught my interest. There were little things that would catch my interest for a little bit, but then we didn't get enough details and we would move on. It just tried to do too much. I gave this 2.5 stars. It ultimately interested me to the very end. I ended up listening to this book through my library, so through Libby. Okay, so 3 audiobooks. Sorry. I knew something was off. So yeah, I ended up listening to this through my library. Like I said, I think there was too much going on. This very much gave me Tuesday Mooney, very much gave me Wednesday vibes. I have not watched the show, but based on what I've heard, that's what it gives me. But also just knowing Wednesday Addams from all the other Wednesday, like Addams Family stuff. That's what it gave me, but ultimately just wasn't as, and even like the narrator, like when she talked like Tuesday, it sounded like Wednesday. So yeah, I don't know. Take that as you will. But ultimately this was 2.5 stars. I don't want to keep the physical book. It was meh. For the Pikachu card, I ended up picking Teen Titans Beast Boy by Cami Garcia, illustrated by Gabriel Piccolo. This is the second book in this series, the first being Teen Titans Raven, which I really enjoyed. Raven is one of my favorite characters from Teen Titans. Beast Boy is a close second. And this one very much felt like the first book in the series, mostly because we are following a whole new character. This is kind of a contemporary teenage retelling of Teen Titans. We are learning about the origin story of their powers, how they're figuring out their powers. So Raven was essentially like the first in the series, but even though this is the sequel, this still felt like the first in the series because it's a whole new character, whole new origin story. I thought we were going to get more into how Beast Boy meets Raven, and we kind of get a snippet of that at the very end, but that's not ultimately what this is about. This is about Beast Boy's origin in this world, which I thought was very interesting. I was a little unsure about his character in the first half of this comic or graphic novel, but by the end, I was totally convinced that I loved his reveal of his true personality. And thought it was really nice and very reminiscent of the Beast Boy that I know and love from the Teen Titans animated series. Not Teen Titans Go, but the animated series that I grew up with in the early 2000s, late 90s. So that was my thought on this. I really enjoyed it. I do hope to continue on with this series. I particularly really enjoy Gabriel Piccolo's illustration style. And actually had found out about this series through Gabriel Piccolo's Instagram. So yeah, I particularly really like it. So yeah, I'm interested to see where the series goes from here. A book that we ended up finishing on our way up to Oregon was Meat Eater, Campfire Stories, Close Calls by Steve Arnella and a bunch of other people. So Steve Arnella is the host to Meat Eaters, which is a TV show that my partner and I like to watch. He's an outdoorsman, hunter, fisherman, and basically the TV show revolves around those aspects in various different parts of the world, really. And it's something that my partner and I like to rewatch every so often because he's an outdoorsman and I enjoy learning more about it. So this particular book is an anthology of sorts of close calls, survival stories of sorts. So it's a nonfiction, and I would definitely look up content warnings if you are interested in going into this, because there is some heavy stuff that this goes through. It's survival stories, it's close calls out in the wilderness. So we get a variety of different stories. This I was only able to find as an audiobook. I don't believe there's a physical version or a physical format of it. So I listened to this through Libro. It's not only has some narration edits with Steve Frenella, but also the people telling the story is the people who had put it in. So it's people that his friends, his co-workers, as well as a couple people, a couple of fans, which I thought was really cool. And it was really cool to hear all of them. This took over a year to listen to, not consecutively, because it's one that I listen to with my partner, and not only do we not drive together very often, but it's a rare occasion where he actually is okay with listening to an audiobook. So this was one that I had found for us both to listen to, and it just took that long for us to finish. So we ended up listening to it, finishing it up on the way up to Oregon, which was an 8-hour drive. It was fun. But like I said, definitely look up content warnings. We get a variety of different survival stories from folks, and they can get heavy. So there is graphic detail of blood and injuries. There is like heavily stuff mentally, descriptions of injuries. So definitely look that up. It was ultimately a really interesting read and really cool to listen to. With my partner, I did not rate this because it's people's survival stories. So Flaffy, I ended up picking Oaksy by Mari Hokovu. I know I'm butchering that so hard. But basically this is a graphic novel. It's a chunker, but I got through it pretty well. It's from the heart of Finnish folklore, tales of mothers, daughters, stars, and legends, and old gods and new. This was darker than I expected it to be. The art was just absolutely gorgeous, fun, and whimsical, but also dark. Very watercolory. I loved it. But basically we are following a little creature called Porling. They believe they are a bear and want to do right by their mom. But they want to be alone with their mom. They want to make their mom proud, who is a bear. But their brothers are kind of interrupting that. There's also Emu, who is the grandmother in the sky. Basically, she wants Bear to come back to her. She is her daughter. And Bear went into the forest and wants to prove that she can make it in the forest. But there's also Mana, who's some kind of creature who is not a mother but believes that they are because they created these shadow creatures. Yeah, very, very interesting story. I don't know if I necessarily got it all, but it was beautiful, and it was darker, like I said, darker than I expected. It took a couple turns that I was like, oh shit. So yeah. But ultimately very beautiful. Really glad that I got to it. For Tim Poll, I picked up Low, Volume 1, The Delirium of Hope. This was also darker than I expected it to be. This is a graphic novel series that basically in a not so distant future, the sun is expanding, and it has made the surface of Earth unlivable. So what do humans do? They venture and build cities into the oceans to get away from the radiation. They have also sent out probes or satellites to go venture out beyond their solar system to see if it can find habitable planets outside the solar system, outside of the danger of the ever-expanding sun. Centuries have gone by and people have lost hope. Sel Kane is not one of those people. Yeah. A lot of heavy things end up happening right off the bat. Sel is a mother as well as a wife and loses almost her whole family within the first couple pages, or first, I guess, chapter essentially. And so it's up to Sel to find her daughters, to bring them home, as well as to find the satellite, to try to build a new future for humanity and to save her son from self-destruction. So yeah, it was an interesting first volume. The art is pretty typical, I found, but just based off the cover, I was kind of hoping for more detail, and there is a lot of detail, but there's also, it's very like quick sketch like, I don't know, but it was ultimately still very fun. I just found myself not able to focus a whole lot on, it's like I either had to focus on the words and then look at the illustrations, or it was just, I very much had to focus in a lot more on the dialogue of the story. I'm probably not going to go into, I have volume 2 and 3. I'm probably not going to go into those very soon after reading this, just because it was a lot to handle. So it'll just depend. But I am still interested in this series. So I actually had pulled a Galarian holographic Articuno. And so because it's Galarian, it's psychic rather than ice, I think it would typically be. And for that, it was to read an anticipated thriller. And for that, I had picked How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This one really particularly piqued my interest because of the concept. I have read Grady Hendrix before, but I was not sure what to think of How to Slay Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. It made me feel icky. So I was kind of going into this one hesitantly. I ended up listening to it through Libro, and my physical copy's on its way. If that tells you anything. I ended up finding it, so this is following two siblings whose parents who died. They have to go to their childhood home, and one sibling wants to just gut the whole thing and sell it, be rid of it. The other wants to go through and see if there's anything that is still reminiscent, is still connected to them, anything like that. So they don't agree on that right off the bat. There's drama that ensues because of that, and then there's even more drama that ensues because after the will reading. So we really get this interesting dynamic of sibling relation and how each of them thought of each other as they grew up. There's that aspect that I really enjoy. There's also the paranormal, scary aspect of it, of like their mom collected dolls and made puppets, and that's something that they have to deal with, and it's inherently just kind of scary. I was listening to this at work and I was constantly making just expressions of just like, what the hell, that really just happened. So that's something I really enjoyed. Actually, it was truly a spooky book. I enjoyed it, but I really enjoyed the dynamic of the relationship that the siblings had. And that's one thing that I found in a lot of books, that these like perfect sibling relationships that always made me feel bad about my sibling relationships, because it's not perfect. I know it's not perfect. So the fact that this sibling relationship was all kinds of fucked, I really enjoyed. Of course, it was like a lot of back and forth, as well as like, I don't know. It was just all the things kind of hit right for me, and I gave this 5 stars. Next, for Evie, I ended up, which is a normal, so that means to read a contemporary, I ended up reading Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. This is a romance. Like the one romance I decided to read for this month. So this one I also listened to through Libro, because why not? I don't know. But this follows Phoebe Walsh, who is a PhD candidate doing her dissertation on true crime, and the relation between author and subject, as well as how people view it. It was really interesting, actually. But her dad ends up dying. She has to go to Florida and help her brother clean up and sell the house. When she gets to Florida, it's late at night, and she is debating on how to get her writing desk into the house. Doesn't want to call her brother right away because it's late into the night. It's like 2 a.m. When someone ends up appearing right next to her, not appearing, but like kind of showing up. This guy shows up and asks if she needs help. She gets freaked out because true crime tells her to be freaked out, not that she's not safe. Yeah, it turns out that that guy was Sam, who was her dad's neighbor and is now currently her neighbor while she is fixing up the house. And things ensue from there, that she thinks that he's a serial killer, but then slowly realizes there's more to him than she originally thought. She's afraid of a relationship ultimately, though, not only because she believes that he's a serial killer, but because she's always been alone. She's always been focused on her work, on her career opportunities. She doesn't see how they can be in a relationship together. So it's all about that. It was very reminiscent of Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. I thought this was done a little better in terms of the third act breakup, but it only reminds me of that because of that third act breakup and how the main character feels like she can't be loved, that she's broken somehow. Like I said, in terms of the third act breakup, I thought that this made a lot more sense to me. It kind of felt out of the blue for Take a Hint, Danny Brown. It also gave me Ernest Cline vibes in terms of, it felt like Alicia Thompson was just wanting to write a book to show off all her knowledge about true crime. Which was fine to an extent. It was just a lot, and in fact there's a couple of books referenced in here that I'm like, I kind of want to read it. But that was like in the first like quarter of the book ultimately, and by the halfway mark I was really enjoying this book. I gave this book ultimately 4.5 stars. There was just some problems I had with Phoebe in the beginning. Really, I thought she was really judgy, was very cynical, and it didn't help either that because I was listening to it on 1.75 speed, that it's like, I don't know, I don't know how to explain it. Like, for some reason, the narrator, I don't know if it was the narrator or how Phoebe was written, or just because I was listening to it on 1.75 speed, that it almost felt very like, she felt very rambunctious in her cynicism. So, not sure. But by the halfway point, I was in it for Phoebe. She is a plus size character. I know that even in the book itself and in society now, that we're trying to change fat into a positive thing, or even like just a neutral thing rather than an insult. That's still a hard thing for me because it's always been used as an insult towards me. So I apologize if I'm not accepting that right away. I'm still going to say plus size. But Phoebe is plus size. And in a very like subtle-ish way of just like, there was little things that Alicia Thompson ended up putting in, like she shops at Torrid, and it's like, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean she's plus size, but then she kind of says like some little things about her body, not in a judgy way at all. It was just very subtle and just little cues that I picked up that I'm like, okay, she is a plus size character, that I appreciated. So, and that, like, it was just happened to be part of her, and I enjoyed it. So, because I was able to relate to it, and therefore then was able to relate to her fascination with true crime, because it is something that I am interested in, though have the same concerns that she does in terms of the relationship of the author, and how that makes, depending on how they write a true crime book, makes it more true or not, and how it affects victims, etc. That whole dynamic was really interesting, and in fact, like I said, towards the end of the book I was really curious about some of the books that is mentioned in here that I have not heard of before. Of course, the main ones were mentioned, of which have completely escaped my brain right now. But ultimately, really enjoyed. Also really enjoyed the sibling dynamic. I did think it was a little like cutesy of sorts, but it was still very interesting, and I loved the growth. That's ultimately what I really enjoyed about it as well, was Phoebe's growth in this book. So yeah, it was really cute. I enjoyed it. 4.5 out of 5 stars. So, dare I say 4.75. Didn't quite hit the 5-star mark. But yeah, that was the books that I read for February. If you've, oh, sorry, I did not talk about my DNF, did I? I DNF'd The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. Have I DNF'd it permanently? I'm not sure. I'm hesitant to say just because I was like damn near 50% of the way through. Why'd I DNF it? Because it was a slog to get to the halfway mark. It was taking me so long to get there. So one thing I'm fine. So The Last Graduate is the second installment in the Scholomance series. I believe it's a trilogy. This one, the first one, there was complaints that it was slow and heavily detailed. I actually liked it about that one and expected it because it was the first book in a series. I did not expect it here in the second one. It's still just as kind of detailed and slow. And we're still getting things explained to us. We're still in Elle's head and things are going so slowly. So, and just halfway through it, I'm just like, what's the point? So I DNF'd it just because I could feel myself. I mean, there was like 3 graphic novels all in a row because I was reading this one and wanted to be able to finish something. So I put it down. Whether it's permanently or just on pause for now, we will see. If you have read this, let me know if it's worth it. And don't just tell me going, it's actually just, you'll enjoy the third one way more. Because if I can't get through this one, then what's the point of going to the third one? So that's my view on that. So yeah, that is my books, the books that I have read in February. If you have read any of these, please let me know your thoughts down in the comments down below. If you've made it this far, I don't know, is there a snowflake emoji? Let's do that because it's still freaking cold out. So I hope that anyone who is affected by this cold is staying warm and safe. Otherwise, yeah, I hope that you are in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading, and I will see you in another video very soon. Ciao.